This week, I sit down with Daniel O'Reilly, also known as Dapper Laughs. Daniel is incredibly honest about his addiction and his journey to sobriety. This is a must listen for anyone who has had a struggle with addiction in the past, or if someone you love has had an addiction problem. Watching the numbers go up really helps me avoid burnout and keeps me motivated to make amazing content for you all. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button or click the follow button on whatever podcast app you're listening to. Thank you so much and enjoy the episode. Daniel, how are you?
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
I've been looking forward to interviewing you for a while since I've seen all the amazing work you're doing around sobriety and raising awareness around mental health. Particularly, I saw you had ADHD as well, and obviously I had to have you on. And I'm thinking, with what you know about ADHD now, like looking back into your early years, were there any signs?
Oh my God. Yeah, I was like the poster boy for what you consider like an ADHD child. And it had been mentioned, it's been mentioned to me before, but not something that I was interested in. Because I just thought I'm normal. I'm just the way I am. Like, what difference does it make if you know, it wasn't mentioned early enough for it to have maybe made a difference with my education. But when I was at school, I was typical class clown, couldn't sit still, messing around constantly. I could academically, you know, like with the maths and the English, I really struggled. I'm also dyslexic, I only really found solace in performing arts, in drama, you know, musical theatre. That's where I really flourished, you know, being active and stuff like that. But I was, in trouble with the police. I got expelled from one school and all that. So, and irritable and, yeah.
It's so interesting because I've interviewed like comedians and people in the past who've said similar. They've said that they were the class clown. And when we've gotten further down the line in the interview, it's become apparent that they were kind of almost using that to mask some kind of deeper insecurity. Do you think do you relate to that?
Yeah, I'm terribly insecure, but I mean, I don't know, like I've always struggled to control my emotions really badly. And I get extreme highs and lows and mood swings and things like that. And I come from, I don't know, I'm still not sure where ADHD comes from, you know, if it's like, you know, because I've gone down different routes of research on it, and, you know, that it could be genetic, that it can, but I feel like the narrative that I most connect with where ADHD comes from is like from like having quite a traumatic upbringing. Like, it doesn't have to be like overly like, you know, like physical or sexual abuse or anything, but coming from like a turbulent home, you know. My mum and dad broke up when I was very young. I was, you know, I didn't see my dad for a long time. There was, you know, there was some violence and things like that. But I mean, my childhood was very disjointed, you know, and I think that's where maybe I feel like it comes from, because I kind of created another self, you know, a way of like sort of masking how I feel. And maybe that's where the comedy comes from, and the performing, the outward projection, you know.
I think as a consequence of that trauma, you might be almost in a state of hypervigilance and just continuously aware of danger and threats, and that might lead to anxiety.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I'm always anticipating the worst, especially throughout my life. I've had, you know, it's been one bad thing after another, you know, serious bad things have happened in my life. I've always recovered from them and learned from them and progressed from them, but I do sort of live in a state of worrying about what's next. But I think more so it's the people pleasing, the wanting the world to love me. I think that's where all comedians that's why all comedians are like, I think, because we come from a place of constantly wanting that gratification or that constant sort of, you know, acceptance from people. I think that's what the showing off, the being funny, and then when you mix that with the content creation, which has obviously become my life, creating content online, it's it definitely shows wanting people to like you.
It's fascinating because I wonder if, you know, it's almost like a bit of a cliche now, but especially when you're talking about the stand-up comic, the clown, perhaps the happier they appear on stage or in 2023 behind the camera, perhaps behind the scenes, it might be a contrast or a contradicting thing that's going on in their head, and they're just projecting that alter ego in a way.
Yeah, I think it's more, I know how dark I can feel, how down I can feel, and I want to make other people not feel like that. Do you know what I mean? So I think, and I feel like I cheat myself into being happy. I feel like laughter and positivity is contagious. So if I can wake up and I'm in a bad place, if I make people, I'm like, the way I behave online, and it's the same way I behave with my kids and my wife, you know, if I can make them laugh, it makes me happy. Do
you worry about what happened to you as a kid? Do you consciously make extra effort to ensure that your two daughters don't experience the same?
It's quite a tough one for me to talk about, really, because my daughter's just been diagnosed or is going through the process of being diagnosed with ADHD, Neve. And it's really, really apparent, you know. The school are being great with it, and they do things at school to help them be less fidgety, and they give them things to focus, and they can give them time out of class. And, you know, we're going through a whole process about neurodivergence and everything like that. And I can see her being unable, more so than my other daughter, Rue, being unable to control her emotions. She's a lot more wilder, and also the noise that's in her mind that I can relate to with my ADHD, it comes out through like constant like talking or making noise. Like this morning I was saying to her, Neve, calm down, because she's there la 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 when she's doing it. But I mean, it's wild, right? And I'm the same in the morning. All my ideas are flying around. But then when I relate that to the reasons why I think I've got ADHD, or what's come from maybe having a traumatic background, I think to myself, well, is it hereditary then, or is it because through the problems that I've had when she was younger, you know, through my addiction, and how I've been, if that's affected her. So yeah, it's a tough one.
I've interviewed a fair few people who have ADHD and are parents.
Yeah.
And they said that becoming a parent was incredible, but it also amplified and perhaps exaggerated some of the traits of ADHD. Did you find that at all when you became a parent?
Yes, because it's emotions, isn't it? I find that the most apparent part of ADHD for me is the irregular emotions. And so like, yeah, you know, just, yeah, the worry, the fear, I think it just heightens all your emotions. It definitely made me take it seriously, want to explore it, especially when I thought maybe my daughter had it originally. That's actually what pushed my diagnosis. It was a mixture through my counselling, what I was learning in my counselling, through trying to get sober, and then having kids. When they started talking about Neve potentially being ADHD, I had to go for a diagnosis to find out if I was properly, like, really.
Is it a worry to see that in your daughter, in a way, seeing how it's affected you with addiction?
Yeah. 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 I mean, I kind of got two minds about ADHD. Like, I feel like if ADHD is understood, it's like they say, it's like a superpower, right? I've got many different businesses. Like, I manage different revenue streams. I've got different projects, podcasts, stand-up comedy, films, and all this stuff. And I think without ADHD, I wouldn't, you know, people think I'm insane, right? Well, I am slightly, but people think I'm crazy to, you know, because we're always looking for the next thing or the other thing. Now I know to, like, I've got to focus on not so many things, but it's set me up now that I understand it and I can control it. But yeah, it worries me that there's such a high percentage. I think it's something like 80% of people with ADHD suffer with addiction problems, something like that, is it? I don't know the exact percentage, perhaps, yeah, but there's a definite link. There's a definite uptick. And I've learned through my counselling and through doing my sobriety podcast and stuff like that, that the drugs that they give you for ADHD to suppress the craziness of what it might feel like in your mind is the same. It's the same as cocaine, right? Ritalin, it's a stimulant. So for me, when I used to take cocaine, it had a sort of an opposite effect to what maybe my friends would be. You know, it'd make them feel a bit crazy and talk loads more and and they'd be like a little bit wild and for me it used to
calm you down,
slow everything down.
Yeah,
it would take me out of my head, in fact, You know, it would take me out of my head. And same with alcohol, you know, like alcohol would cut, like I have so many, the best way that I could describe ADHD to anyone that wonders if they've got it or it's out there, it's like 100 different, or maybe not 100, but maybe 25 different thoughts of what to do in that exact moment, all happening at once. You know, maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that. And the way that I know, because you know, I watch a lot of stuff online and on other comedians taking the piss out of people with ADHD, you know, and I even do a joke on I've written a joke into my new stand-up tour where I'm like, anyone else diagnosed with ADHD? And then I say, yeah. I said, did you get diagnosed on TikTok as well? Because there's so many people that are watching TikToks and they're like, I've got ADHD. And I was very much, all right, I'll get the diagnosis, you know, for the sake of my daughter to find out if I have got ADHD, to see if it's in the family or whatever. But I don't really know if I have, or I'm just like a little bit mental, or just like over ambitious, or just a bit crazy. But now that I've had the diagnosis, I can feel it. It's weird. And because I'm sober, 100% because I'm sober, I'll be doing something and I'll be halfway through doing it and I'll be compelled to start doing something else when it makes no sense at all. I'll be washing up or something and I know I've got to finish the washing up. I'm right in the middle of the washing up. There's no point doing anything else because it's like 1 or 2 little cups left or something. And I'll be like, nah, I'm going to go and do that quickly.
It's that executive function deficit or that like impulsivity. And you get just that impulsivity which can get you hugely excited about a different task. Like you said, you could be doing the washing up and then suddenly you think of a business idea and you've got to go buy the domain now. You can't wait.
Exactly.
So you end up just abandoning the washing up.
Exactly.
Then your partner's having a go at you because you haven't done the washing up and you're just like on your computer, hyper-focusing on the screen, planning the branding and all the logos.
My God, yeah, that is exactly it, man. I'm like, once I'm into something, I'm gone.
Yeah. You can get quite angry or this internalized rage if someone interrupts that hyper-focus.
Definitely.
Do you find that?
Yeah, because I know it don't last long, or that I get frustrated that I'm finally interested in something. Like yesterday, I ran a half marathon, 13 point.
Did you? God, well done.
13.1 miles. 13.1 miles, and got home. And Miss was like, right, sit down. We're gonna get a pizza and stuff like that. I was like, no, I've got to do something else. Do you know what I mean? So they were sitting watching a film, and I was sort of wandering around trying to find something to do. I just wasn't ready to settle. And that to me is insanity, right? Half a marathon, you should be like that. I mean, my body was in bits, but I just wasn't. And sometimes I get really annoyed just trying to watch TV. I just sit there and I'm like, this ain't right. Weird.
You find that your inability to settle down can cause issues in your relationship?
Yeah. Not now we kind of understand it. She kind of understands it. But the big problem that it caused in my was I always felt like I should be doing something. It was such a weird feeling. Like even if I'd done loads that day, I always felt like I should be doing something. And then I'd get really angry that I'm not doing something. Do you know what I mean? So I'd be sat with her and she'd be like, what's wrong? I'm like, I don't know. I just feel like I should be doing something. And she used to take that quite personally as like I didn't want to be with her or I didn't want to be sat with her, you know? So she used to be like, oh, well, if you'd rather be doing that, then go and do that. And it would cause friction. But now she knows that I'm just tapped in the head with the ADHD stuff. But yeah,
it's such like you see the longevity of relationships massively improves once that understanding of ADHD is thrown into the mix. Because exactly like you said, we could be watching a film with our wife, girlfriend, and even though we're on the sofa, my arm could be even around her watching the film. Like my mind could be
somewhere
in the
else.
Office.
I'm always doing that. Yeah, and I love ADHD, to be honest with you. I quite like it.
Yeah, I
do quite like it, but because I feel like I'm part of something. I'm like, oh, I've got ADHD, and that's part of the reason why I'm quite successful, because my mind works differently to yours. But where I don't like ADHD is where I'm stood talking to someone new like yourself, then I drift off to somewhere, and then I see that they notice. I'm like, oh, now they think I don't like them, or I'm being rude.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, 100 is so relatable. You can drift out, zone off, and sometimes I can pay attention to you more when I'm looking the other way. It sounds ridiculous. Like, and I say that to people, and it's why I'm trying to do a lot of awareness around neurodiversity in business. Like, let's just ditch old-fashioned things that say someone is professional, like a strong handshake, good eye contact. It doesn't. Sometimes if I'm looking at you directly in the eye, it actually means I'm listening to you less.
Yeah, or thinking about what you're saying. Yeah.
Super interesting. And the hyperfocus as well. You know, that's a massive one, and I attribute it definitely to some of the stuff I've done. Do you lean into the hyperfocus when it happens?
Yeah, I'm a creative, right? So my life revolves around me being able to create comedy content, right? Everything else that I do, business, my podcast, and everything, that's just extra stuff in my life. What my passion is, and my love, and my skill, my talent, I guess, or what I really believe that I'm good at is my comedy and writing comedy, and it comes and goes. You know, like the creativity comes and it goes. And I used to spend a lot of my time being really frustrated, sitting there going, come on, I want to be funny, I want to post, you know, because I'm addicted to social media, addicted to my phone and all that, and the dopamine hits you get from the likes and the comments coming in and stuff like that. And I have to find a subject that I'm interested in to write about or to come up with ideas about. And the ADHD is really apparent, because if there's nothing going on in the world that's stimulating me to come up with an idea, I will try and force it. I'll get frustrated and there's nothing there. But now I know, if there's nothing stimulating me to make me want to write comedy or be funny, to just leave it and go and do something else and find something else that I can focus on.
Right.
Because when it comes, I know. So yeah, when I feel it, I see it, and the hyper focus is coming in, I engage with it. But that I find that that's quite difficult as well, because if someone asks, like now I don't bother doing things that I know I'm not going to be interested in. If someone asks me to do something, I have to be brutal. You know, if someone wants to spend time with me doing something and I know I'm going to struggle doing it and I'm not going to be interested in it, now finally through my sobriety, I've got the confidence to say, yeah, I'm not going to do that, sorry.
That's so important to avoid burnout, to have that awareness and the confidence to not be a people pleaser and say yes to everything, because that's such a common issue that I see from speaking to people on this podcast is we overcommit. It's almost like, because we're so scared perhaps of confrontation, we say yes to everything. And then we've suddenly got too much to do, and then we end up burning out and letting people down, which can then cause huge anxiety.
Yeah, and I also find that if I like, say for instance, I play golf, right? And I really struggle with golf because I like golf, but I only like golf for about an hour.
Yeah.
And golf is, 9 holes is normally 2.5 hours, 3 hours or something like that. And I can feel myself drifting away from it. And some days I know I definitely ain't right for golf. It definitely ain't right for me. And I used to go anyway, and then I'll be on my phone, or I wouldn't be paying attention, or I'll kind of give up. And it's like that with many things in life. And then people get pissed off. Why'd you come if you're not interested, or you can't be bothered, or we're talking to you and you're not listening? So I just say no now when it's not right. Yeah.
Do you think on the flip side, putting out the content when it doesn't quite go to plan, or you don't get the engagement that you hope for on social media, essentially the content gets rejected, or do you think you're quite sensitive to criticism and rejection?
Yeah, mate. Yes,
we all seem to be.
Yes, I'm the worst. Listen, I've been doing it for years and I still cannot get over negative comments. I just can't. You know, some of them are so blatantly ridiculous and after a rise that I can be intelligent enough to ignore them. But if there's slight truth in anything, slight bit of truth in anything that's there, it can ruin whole days for me. And like for instance, I got a box, right? So I got a whole new boxing sparring kit, and I put it online. I was like, done a video with this fancy sparring kit, and there's one comment on there: "Can't believe you're blagging free boxing gear, ha 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 ha," right? And I was like, how do you know they're not blagging free promo, right? Put that out. I thought that was really cool, putting that out. But it still pissed me off all day because I had blagged free boxing gear, right? And it was like, I don't know why it got to me so much, but it's like just these opinions, any negative opinion on me. I'm in the wrong game because any negative opinion on me dents me hard for a long time.
I've spoken to people who don't experience this, let's call it rejection sensitive dysphoria. That's what the community has kind of labeled it. Like, how would you describe the feeling when that gets triggered?
Like negative thought loops. That's how I'd describe it. My mind gets stuck in negative thought loops. Why are they saying that? Oh my God, they're saying that because is everyone else thinking that? Or if they're saying that, then how else is it being perceived? Shall I delete that? Or why this? Why that? Question. I go back to question myself, and then I'm like, it's mad. It is really, because if I can take enough, if I can notice things that get me down, and I can take time away from them, and I start becoming present again, I appreciate everything that's around me. But I can be taken on a journey. Like so many horrific, terrible things have happened to me in my mind that never materialized, in these negative thought loops. It's mad. I don't get it. But it's the one part of ADHD that I'm desperate to master.
When was ADHD first mentioned in your life?
I think when I was getting arrested, I had antisocial behaviour problems when I was, or maybe I was knocking around with the wrong crowd, but like around college, you know, I was thriving I'd done performing arts at college. I was thriving in in like the singing, dancing and acting, but any like sort of written work and stuff like that, I was really just rejecting. And also I was having problems outside, you know, drinking too much and everything like that. And it was kind of mentioned then, but not really something that seemed like, what's the point if I have, like, I'm just about to finish college, what does that matter? And then about a couple of years ago when I started counselling, because I was having severe, I thought I was bipolar because I was having like severe ups and like devastating downs, and I was like really happy, fun and wild. Then I was like terribly upset, down and depressed for prolonged days. Although I also was heavily using cocaine and drinking, do you know what I mean? So it was just, looking back on it now, it's just come downs. Yeah. But you know, through that I thought I'm bipolar, you know, because I'm having these mad mood swings, but it was addiction. And then through that journey, my counsellor spoke about ADHD when I described some of the ways I was thinking, how I found it difficult to manage my emotions and the racing thoughts, the overthinking. That was the main sign for me. I think that because when you go, sorry to go on, but when you go sober, the massive thing about sobriety, if you have ADHD, I feel like through my ADHD, whenever it got a little bit too much, when the thoughts and the negative thought loops and everything that was going through my mind got too much, I'd heavily drink. You know, I could get, because I was never, in the last 10 years, I don't think I was ever sober for more than like 4 days. I was either drunk or hungover, or drunk or on a come down. So I was never like at base level for like 10, 15 years. And I think that once it would get too much towards the weekend or whatever, it would get suppressed with drink and drugs. But through my sobriety, it hit me like a freight train, you know. It was like suddenly I was like, I couldn't drink, I couldn't do drugs, I couldn't escape it. It built and built and built.
The ADHD assessment, how did you find that?
I done mine online via Zoom. It was done in 2 parts. So like an initial thing where she was like, right, we'll do this initial thing to see if we think you should do the full assessment. It was a good few hours and all of that jazz, and it wasn't exactly cheap, but I thought it would be, I don't know, the only thing I thought is maybe they'd test me for dopamine deficiency. That's one thing that I thought, because clearly I think I've got dopamine problems. And I think that's a big contributor to ADHD, or a good signal of ADHD maybe. But I found it really interesting, because my answers that I was saying to her in relation, the questions that she was asking me, I knew. Like she'd ask me a question like, do you find it difficult to do this? Or da-da-da. And when I was answering them, I already knew. And she actually said to me on the lady that done my test, when she'd done the initial like hour, to see if I should have like the proper prolonged one, when she was doing like her assessment, she went, well, aside from the answers to the questions, which I will go over on my own, aside from the actual answers, visibly watching you do this test, you changed position 8 times. I brushed my teeth during the test. I changed my top, which I mean is weird because I'm on a Zoom anyway, but off screen I changed my top. I'd brushed my teeth. I'd gone from sitting on the bed with the laptop to sitting up the top. I started writing something else. I lost fight. Like she said that you were on your phone. She'd made a note of all the times that I'd picked up my phone and that I'd text and everything. So aside from the answers to the questions, she said, just visibly doing the test, she's like, I think you're definitely there. Do you know what I mean? We definitely should move on to the next section of this thing.
That's so weird. The psychologist, aside from everything else, she said, just by looking at you on the Zoom call, I can diagnose you with ADHD. I didn't brush my teeth, but I did a lot of the other stuff. When she said you have ADHD, how did you feel?
I think by the time I'd done the test, I knew, because of everything she was asking me and how I was responding. I mean, I think I'm intelligent enough to go, well, normal people would probably say that, but this is how I feel, or this is what I do. And when we were talking about it, and also through my counselling at the time, and through my sobriety, I started to become really aware that it was difficult managing my thoughts.
When did you notice that alcohol was becoming a real problem?
When I had to kind of slow down because of life. When I had kids, maybe. I mean, not even when I had kids. The the best way to answer it is when I noticed alcohol and drugs were a problem was when the idea entered my head that maybe I am doing too much, and I tried to slow down. That's when I knew, because I couldn't, it's such a difficult question, because when I look back at my life and all the carnage that alcohol and drugs had caused, more or less every or majority of the negative things that I've done or caused have been associated with drink and drugs. I still, up until 3 years ago, up until probably 2 years ago, I still would never have thought that I had a problem. It was only until I tried to stop.
Do you think there's a big bit of denial when you've been sober for a little bit, and you were sober for 6 months, right? And then you drank again. What, in that moment, if you zoomed in that particular moment after those 6 months when you had another drink, what was going through your mind at that particular point?
Well, I was having like massive breakdowns on like once a month, maybe, on come downs, when I was mixing the alcohol with cocaine. I was like freaking out at home. I don't know if it was paranoia stuff or like these episodes, right, where the world, it probably is a mixture of the ADHD and the alcohol and drug abuse or whatever, but the world was just becoming too much, and I was having these breakdowns. And my wife was just like, I wasn't married to her at the time, but I've been with her for 10 years, and she was just sick of it, me disappearing for an evening or whatever. I was getting pissed 2 or 3 times a week, and I was like, but this is, I work hard, look at your house, this was the addict mind. I was like, look at your house, look, we've got money and I'm working, I deserve a release. She'd had enough of it and spoken to me about it and said, the drinking turns you into an arsehole and stuff like that. So I gave up drinking to keep her happy, really. It wasn't, I didn't think I had a problem. I was like, all right, I didn't want to lose my wife and my kids, right? So I was like, all right, cool, well, it's only drinking, so I'll stop. So I stopped, but then I got bored really quickly. It wasn't I didn't do 6 months. I think it was just under. It was 3 or 4 months, maybe a bit longer. And but I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it like to her and to prove to myself that I didn't have a problem. I can give up drinking and stop. So I just I didn't change my lifestyle or who I was hanging around with. I just went sober, and then I thought, I've proved it now for long enough. I've put the work in. I always knew that there'd be a time that I'd, when I'd done enough, I could come back. And then it was Christmas, and I was like, it's the best time of year. And plus, I'm only going to come back and have a few drinks here and there. You know what I mean? And I definitely ain't going to use drugs again. But within a week, I was back in the mix of it, full on. And within 2 weeks, the arguments had started again. And within 3 weeks, I was doing drugs again. And then I kind of knew then that I was a little bit in trouble. So I actually tried to consume as much as I could, I think, before I'd have to stop again. So it escalated, and then I had my stag do. So I thought I'll wait till after my stag. Then I had the wedding, and I thought I'll wait till after the wedding. And along the way, I was just causing carnage until she'd had enough again properly.
Was there like a particular moment, like a particular last drink that really made you aware that you had to stop?
Yeah, there was a weekend. It was on the Thursday night. I'd gone out and got drunk and used, and then I'd woke up in the morning and had another one of these downturns, and she'd just had enough and kicked me out. And I came back, and the Friday, she let me back, and she was like, this is why you shouldn't be drinking and or doing drugs. It was so much better when you were sober. But the next day we were flying out to Marbella. I had a film premiere for The Last Heist, a film that I produced and I was starring in. And we were flying out together, and she gave me another chance, basically, because it was a big weekend for me. And she was like, look, we're going together. Let's just try and go there together, but I don't want you to drink, And I was like, I can't go in Marbella. Like, all my friends, everyone's going. I can't go and not drink, but I won't use any drugs. And as soon as we landed, I started drinking. The argument started, and then I ended up using drugs. And she had enough of it and flew home. But it was a massive bust up in front of everyone, all my work people in the film industry, and it was quite clear what had happened. And then I just stayed and carried on drinking for another couple of days and using, and like in this mist of I don't know what. And then the addiction.
And that was your last drink?
Yeah, and then I kind of snapped out of it and realised that she'd been gone. She'd gone home for 2 days. I didn't, concept of time had sort of left me, and I couldn't go back. I couldn't go back home. I couldn't, it was over between me and her. I had no idea what was going on with my kids for those 2 days. Do you know what I mean? I mean, they were with her parents, but I mean, I hadn't checked in or anything like that. And that's when I realised, I was like, this is well out of your control now. You can't control, once you touch a drink or drugs, you can't control yourself. And I black out and just go for it. It's like this oblivion. It's like Pandora's box for me. It's like, all the worries in the world, suddenly I'm getting smashed, and I couldn't care about anything else. And that's when I realised I was ill, that I really was an addict, that I really was a drug addict and an alcoholic. And I hate saying it, but I also love saying it. I'm also like, it's liberating. And then I come home and went to rehab, and I went away for a few weeks and to like a wellness rehabilitation detox thing. And then it took a little bit more time for Shelley to trust me again. But that was 11 months ago.
What was the relationship like with your daughters at this time? Did they see you drunk?
No, they didn't. I wasn't, if I drank, I was out drinking. They maybe saw me hungover and irritable in the morning. It breaks my heart. They've probably seen me shout a few times. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, that breaks my heart, because I don't know what was going on in my mind, but, shouting in front of the kids is, it's difficult to put yourself, to think of you doing that if maybe they were scared. But luckily it was once or twice, screaming up the stairs at my missus or whatever, having a halfway through an argument. But luckily never seen me drunk and like uncontrollable. But look, the whole point of it is, by the time by the time that had happened, and you have to hit rock bottom. Sometimes our partners have to have had enough of us in order for us to realise what we're doing to our lives. And I'm lucky enough to have gone through that before I lost them all, and I had someone that she could see the good in me. She said she's proud of me now, and she just needed it to click. Do you know what I mean? She just needed it to click. And when I was getting sober, and we were when I wasn't at home, right at the beginning, the first sort of few days and few weeks, all I was thinking about is, because my kids are 4 and 6, I was thinking, what are they going to remember? And that was my motivation when they're 16, 17, what are they going to look back and remember, these arguments and these hangovers and stuff, or what do I want them to remember, like, over me? So now they get the best version of me. We have beautiful weekends.
I'm not a parent, but you must be a better dad if you're not hungover and you're present and you're at that base level.
Mate, it's mate, 100 times. 100 times. Look, sometimes I look back and I beat myself up, and maybe I can be quite hard on myself as a parent. I was still there. I was still a loving father. I loved my kids. Do you know what I mean? I spend time with them, but at the weekend, on a Saturday and Sunday, I'd rather give them an iPad than take them out, because I was hungover and probably more irritable, like more like less patient with them, because young kids are really annoying. Do you know what I mean? They are like on your case constantly. And I had my own things going on, and plus wishing the time away. If it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I was wishing the week away to the weekend to drink. That's my whole life revolved around drinking. Where was we going? Who's going to drive? Because I'm going to drink. And are we at a barbecue? Yeah, you drive so I can drink. So I'm not present. When I was drinking, I wasn't as present. Now, I don't want to be anywhere else apart from at home or out doing a bit of work. The only place I want to be is at home with them kids and my wife.
Your family must be really proud of your sobriety.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. Yeah. And yeah, it can be quite emotional sometimes when especially when the missus, because I always knew that we were in love. Like, I always knew that we were good together. It just didn't seem like it a lot of the time because we were arguing. And now when I look back, I'm like, see, I was right. We are right together. Because once you take out the drink and the drugs, we are so happy. I mean, don't get me wrong. She's Northern. She's a hard woman. And she we have We have little disagreements about if I forget doing something or something's going on around the house, but we don't shout at each other and argue anymore. And we haven't since I've gone sober. It's like, I just cherish I cherish what I've got now. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
You happy to talk about your father?
Yeah.
I saw an interview you did, and you said that he made a comment about your drinking in 2017.
Yeah. Just before he died.
Were you drinking at that time?
Yeah, I was. Do you know what the crazy thing is? Now, when we talk about rock bottoms, like the rock bottom that I described to you, which was 11 months ago, that was one of many rock bottoms. But that was the rock bottom for me that showed like I had no other choice. It was either drinking drugs or my family. But I'd had many, many other situations that were horrific because of drinking drugs, and my father's death was one of them. But he started taking me aside and saying to me, one thing he always used to say to me is, every time I see a video of you online or a picture of you, you've got a drink in your hand. And he kept saying that. And then we went to Las Vegas just before he died. Me, my brother wanted us to go. It's me, my brother, and my dad. And we arrived in Las Vegas and they were tired. So they wanted to go up to the room and sleep and wake up fresh to go in a helicopter across the canyon and all that. But I was in Las Vegas. So I wanted to drink and find some cocaine and gamble. Like I did. That's what it's about, right? That's what I thought it was about. So they said, no, we're going to bed. I said, well, I'm just going to go downstairs for a bit. And I disappeared for 3 days. And when we were there, they couldn't find, my phone had died. I'd found drink, drugs and gambling and whatever. I was just on the rampage for 3 days. But I thought it was like 6 hours or something. So by the time I got back to the room, I opened it and it was, where the fuck have you been? What's going on? They'd rang back home. They'd contacted my then fiance Shelley, or, you know, and he was like, you've got a problem, you know? And even then I was just like, mate, we're in Vegas. Like,
the worst place for a alcoholic to
yeah,
be,
but,
right?
but I wasn't I didn't think I was an alcoholic then. I was like, I was just having a good time. But saying that, actually it started before that. The flight was so long that, and now see, I look back, all the signs were there. I look back on it. It's difficult for me to look back, to be honest, because I look back and I'm like, because I kind of tricked myself into thinking, oh, I just became an alcoholic 11 months ago when everything went mad. But I've been an alcoholic my whole adult life, because even on the flight over there, I got so excited at the airport. I got drunk at the airport and smashed on the plane, fell asleep and passed out. The flight was so long that I woke up and got drunk again. I got smashed twice. I had 2 hangovers on the flight over there. And then I drank, even though after we'd had that whole argument, I drank for the rest of that holiday. I more or less ruined that holiday. And yeah, it's like, yeah, my dad had it breaks my heart that my father he didn't see me become a father, and he hasn't seen me go sober. So, you know, people say he's there, but it breaks my heart because I just lost my TV show, my career and everything. You know, what I thought was messed up. He'd been on this journey for me to become a comedian since I was 15, 16. I wanted to be a stand-up comedian, and he'd been on this whole journey with me, seeing me build it up to selling out tours, getting millions of fans and having a TV show. And then he just saw it all fall apart and crumble to the ground. And then I guess saw me turning into an alcoholic, and then he died. So it was tough.
But you think he'd be proud of you now, right?
He wouldn't believe it, mate. He wouldn't. I often think to myself what he'd say, but I find it hard to sometimes to look at my life. I wonder who I am now. I'm like, I can't believe it, to be honest, sometimes, because my whole being was wrapped up in self-destruct, really. It's my coping mechanism was getting absolutely annihilated. But yeah, I think if he saw me with my kids now, he'd be proud.
You see it a lot, don't you? Like people who are drunk for so long and then they enter sobriety, and because they haven't known sobriety really ever, they don't know who they are. So you then have to sort of start this new process of self-awareness and building up an actual knowledge of who you are. It's like you've had this mask of alcohol and drugs on, and so you start this whole new journey, and sometimes you can like what you see, and sometimes you don't like what you see. And it's that if you drank to turn the volume down on that racing mind, And you've got to deal with those thoughts now as a sober person, and that's hard.
Mate, that is what you've just said is exactly what it is. It's like drink and drugs aren't the problem. They're the solution to your problems. So the drink and drugs was the solution to my problem. My problem was I couldn't cope with being me. I couldn't sit with my thoughts and whatever trauma I'd been through when I was younger, whatever I'd seen or whatever I think, when I was younger, I'd hide away within myself to take myself out of situations, and alcohol gave me that and drugs gave me that. And that's why sobriety is so hard. This last 11 months has been the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And it's simply because once you peel away the layers, and especially there's a massive realization of guilt and shame around your behavior. Even though for years and years and years you think, mate, this is what everyone does. Everyone drinks, everyone gets smashed, everyone has arguments with their missus. Everyone's missus is on them to fucking stay at home and da-da-da-da-da. This is what everyone's doing. Everyone's going through this. It's part of being a man. Everyone causes these problems. Everyone has this drama. When you peel away all the layers and then you're like, right, you're trying to find yourself, and then you realize who you are, and not all of that's positive, and you can't suppress them emotions. Them emotions are coming up, and the realization, the guilt, the shame, you are desperate to drink at the very point that you're trying to go sober. So it's like everything is pulling you towards, I don't want to deal with this, I want to drink, and everything else is pulling you towards, but this is your sobriety journey. And that battle for the first 2 or 3 months is horrific.
I think it's a dangerous place for someone to be, because they've got sober, they've then got to deal with the guilt or whatever, the shame of what they've done when they're drunk. And you can end up getting into a really dangerous place where you can't handle life drunk because it became unmanageable, but you also can't handle life sober.
Yeah.
And that's a really dangerous place for someone to be in.
Exactly. And that's why you find that everyone that goes sober turns into like some sort of spiritual guru. That's why you find that people that go sober all of a sudden are doing ice baths or mountain climbs or like turning into fitness freaks because you need marathons. Yeah. Like, or on podcasts talking about it. Yeah. But it's because you need something else to make you feel good because it's so dark. It is dark. I mean, now my life is full of light. I mean, I'm actually really proud of myself, regardless of, I see that everything I've learned from now that I've got a platform, I can give back. So I try and find the positive in everything, and I don't even the rock bottoms and the things I've done wrong, I try and look at them in a positive light. I never blame anything on addiction and alcohol and drugs, because I mean that was part of my problem, but also I was selfish at the time. I think it would be unfair to just be like I was an addict, so I was an arsehole. It's not the case, but I think that's why we end up doing well-being stuff, like well-being stuff. You start working on your well-being, like trying to manage how you feel and that, because it can get dark. Yeah. Sorry, I'm going on.
Based around your experience with addiction, what advice would you give someone who may be struggling with alcoholism?
To not be afraid of what sobriety looks like on the other side, because if you're anything like me, like drinking and drugs sort of becomes your lifestyle, and the thought of looking over the fence at what sobriety looks like is really daunting, because we can end up using alcohol for everything, to cope, to socialize, everything. And my advice to you would be just believe that it's better sober, because 100% it is. I mean, it takes a long time to click, but trust me, it's better. And you'll only ever get sober, and I'm a firm believer of this, if you change your complete lifestyle. So there's nothing wrong with thinking, right, I don't want to see them people anymore. I don't want to go to them places anymore. And if you're not happy with who you are as a person, then just reinvent yourself. That's what I've done. There's some people, the only thing I had in common with them was drink and drugs, and they're not part of my life anymore. I don't dislike them. I just don't see them. And I've made my whole life now about looking after myself so I can look after the ones I love. It's never too late to completely change your lifestyle.
Are you happy?
Yeah, I am. In the genuine sense of the word happy, as in like peace. I believe for me, because I think trying to chase happiness is a form is dangerous for an addict, you know, because really what is happiness? Some people confuse dopamine with happiness, you know, eating chocolate and feeling good, going for a run and feeling good, having a cold dip, feeling good. For me, happiness is peace, right? So no drama. Like, you know, a lot of people say if you go sober, it's boring. Yeah, man, I love that. I love no drama, peace, and appreciating, you know, just the simple things in life that you can't buy. But yeah, I have pinch me moments daily where I'm like, this is all right, man. And I'd never used to have them. I'd never had them before.
I think a lot of people will relate to that piece. You know, you're either chasing whatever it is, or you're hungover and anxious. And to be free of both of those.
Mate, I tell you what, I've got some of my friends now that I wish I could grab and shake and say, you got a problem, mate, you know, your life is a mess and you'd be so much happier. But I wouldn't, because, you know, I've kind of hinted at it, but I can see them living for the weekend, destroying themselves over the weekend, and then being so hungover and a mess during the week that they're just desperate to get to the weekend to do it all over again. And they're just never at a normal, they're in a grip.
What scares you?
Drinking again. And not being a good father, you know. I'm so in love with the new version of myself that I'm not tempted to drink alcohol or to do drugs, but I'm worried that if something bad was to happen in my life, you know, like someone close to me passing away, or I don't know, something uncontrollably devastating, of how I would react. Because in the last 11 months, things have been all right in my life. Do you know what I mean? They've progressively got better. So, you know, if I look back through my life when bad things happen, you know, I don't cope with them very well. So fingers crossed, when that does happen, I'm strong enough.
Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing for the community. Your sobriety story is fascinating, and I think you're going to be helping a lot of people. A lot of people will listen, a lot of people will relate, and they'll see that it's possible to stop and to stay stopped, and to make your loved ones proud, and to live a life that is just free from all the crap that comes if you're an addict. So thanks, Dan.
Thank you. And anyone that is on their own sobriety journey or sobriety curious, please come and check out Menace to Sobriety, my podcast. And I've also got a group, Men and Their Emotions Mates, on Facebook, for men that are struggling. We just openly ask questions and talk and have a conversation in there. And thank you for having me on. I never thought I'd be doing positive podcasts like this. I'm normally on Newsnight apologising. So this is really good. Thank you.
Thanks,
I feel
mate.
proud.
Thanks so much. Cheers.